Hey everybody, we're Workforce Gaming. I'm Doug, along with Brad.
Hello.
And this week, Brad had purchased Resident Evil 7 because I'm sure it was on sale.
Yep.
and I think Brad, you're like I haven't played this game at all, so this is kind of more of like an info session for Doug.
Doug figures out what this is.
Yeah. I mean, a review for everybody. Um, but no, I know I sort of like kind of lightly followed the Resident Evil series. Like I played the PS1 ones, but I haven't really followed it since. That's not true. I just don't. Anyway, I know you like Resident Evil, so you are like you like Resident Evil a lot, don't you? Is that like you're kind of like a
I'm oddly like super weird just because like my parents were not about buying me a game with bloody monsters called Resident Evil when I was a kid. So my experience with Resident Evil pretty much starts with 4 and goes to everything after that, which I know
yeah.
like everything after 4 is what nobody else likes, but I was always kind of okay with them. And every time I try and go back and play the PlayStation ones, I just get frustrated. So I like Resident Evil, but I like Resident Evil in a weird way that most people don't.
Oh yeah, you're like a the not what is it? I don't know what do you call those? You're like a prequel fan essentially. Like if there's Star Wars, you would be the prequels fan.
Yeah, kind of. And like by no means are like 5 and 6 great games, but they're interesting games and they're kind of fun.
Yeah.
And like I like Revelations; those are fun. And oh, going back and playing like Umbrella Chronicles and Dark Side Chronicles for the Wii, those are good light gun games. But anyway, Resident Evil 7 is amazing.
I was like, Emerald Seal 7 is, from what I can understand, nothing like those games. But
No, it is not, and it is well, okay. It's very misleading because it gets to those games.
yeah,
Again, no spoilers or anything, but this game has two not very different tones, but it definitely has a very tight, almost like Resident Evil 1 feel, where it's like you are in this kind of big, sprawling house. In this case, almost more of an estate, where it's like you've got like your house, your guest house, that sort of thing
yeah.
for the first probably 3/4 of it. And then you kind of, towards the end, you get more into some more of the Resident Evil norms of kind of like trying to figure out where this stuff comes from and like how can you stop it. You kind of get into that stuff once you get past the very well done survival horror aspect of the first 70-80% of the game, which if you've played Outlast, it's like that, but like way better.
You like Outlast a
To,
lot too, because
I
you
do
play,
like Outlast a lot.
did you
Yes,
play both of them? I'm just or no, just the first one.
I haven't got around to the second one, so I only
Yeah,
played the first one, but I like the first one a lot. But it very much feels like that. It feels like if you took that and Resident Evil and kind of combined them, and just it works very similar to Resident Evil 1 because I was just playing the remake a year or so ago when it came out, maybe 2 years ago when it came out on PS4. It feels very similar to that in the sense of like what.
I just remember the text I got you. I think the text I got from you regarding the remake was, "I hate this."
That's my irritation with the PS1 versions of this whole franchise, where like I can't get my mind through like
Yeah, no, I got you.
maps and all this old. It's all that like old classic gaming stuff that like I was like 8 to 13 when all that stuff was around, and it just pissed me off then, and I don't think I ever got over that. Um, that whole style of like, oh, like if you remember where this is, it's like no, I just want to go. Let's go forward.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it feels very much like that, where it's like, okay, you've got to go find these couple pieces. You kind of got to explore through this house and understand how this house is connected, and there's secret rooms connecting different parts of the house. And a lot of it's just kind of going around and exploring this house and seeing what's all here and figuring out kind of a little bit more about the situation you're in. Because the way it's set up is basically your character gets an email from this girl who's been missing for 3 years. And you need to go. She's like, oh, come here. And you're like, all right, cool. I haven't seen you in 3 years. Like, I missed you. Like, your husband and wife. And great, let's go. Let me go find you. And you get there, and then you're like, oh, man, this goes crazy. And where the hell am I? And you kind of get captured by the Baker family whose house this is. And it's just this kind of sense of trying to get out for the first little bit. And then as you get out, trying to move further and further away from this house, and then you kind of realize some things that are going on as you meet up with a couple different characters. And it's done so well, and it blends the feeling of that survival horror with that classic Resident Evil, like let's go find the different colored whatevers. There's actually one part where you have to find a key with a blue tag and a key with a red tag.
Yeah.
Kind of that real old throwback to those old key card systems. And then, of course, you've got the oh, here's a a thing in the wall and it's shaped like these three things. Go find these three things and plug them into the wall to open the secret door. So you've got that, and you've got the survival horror aspect. You've got some of the more action feel of the later ones comes in at certain different points, especially with some boss battles where you do have a good chunk of ammo and you're trying to take some stuff down. So I don't know, this game just I feel like I'm just really rambling because it's so good. I don't even know which part I want to focus on.
Well, I guess to get into specifics. I mean, like, so I guess let's talk about like the tone of the game, because this is actually one of the things that I've like. One of the reasons I've kind of stayed away from it is because I actually do like Resident Evil 4. Because I just realized like, no, I actually like Resident Evil 4 a lot. And I actually did beat 5. But they're very cheesy. And then when I played the demo for this one, it was like no cheese. Like just rotting bodies and violence, and I was like, "Oh,
yeah, there's no cheese, no cheese, none at all, no cheese in this at all." It's very much, and it's as you play through, it's explained very well, the motives and the psychological state, so to speak, without getting into too much detail of these characters and of what's going on in this house and what's going on. In the general area that this game takes place in.
Yeah.
It's explained very well why that's all there and why there is no cheese necessarily to this. I guess maybe there might be one or two pieces, but nothing instantly comes to mind. But a lot of it is very much that like you're fucked. That is the tone of this game, especially for the first 70-80% of it.
Yeah.
And it's not even that there's a big tonal shift at the end, but more so just that like I don't want to get into spoilers, but anyway, the first like 70% of it is a lot of just like, what the hell is going on? What's that? Like, oh my God, where's that? What? There's different things that kind of pop up around the house. There's one character in particular that just kind of shows up and doesn't do anything, but they show up in the most random spots.
Yeah.
And it's revealed way later in the game what this means, but which obviously you would see coming as it's like, oh, this keeps happening, but it's just that freaky, never settled feeling. And playing it in VR, which I didn't play the whole thing in VR. I played about the first hour and a half and then played the rest no VR. And then after I finished, I went back to like a couple like scenes where I was like, ooh, that'd be cool in VR. Like, ooh, how does that work in VR? Because it's done really, really well. And just the way the characters interact. If you did Kitchen or the demo, that feeling you get in Kitchen where you're kind of helpless shows up a lot in this, where you're just sitting and not even necessarily sitting, sometimes walking or something like that, or just these different kind of scripted scenes where you're kind of led down a path.
Yeah.
You get this very uneasy feeling the whole time. And that pops up over and over again. And it's so intense. And it's just so perfectly done where it's just like you don't even know where to go with it, just because you kind of almost freeze for a second. She's like, oh my God, like what's going to happen? And the game is very okay with violence from the get-go.
Yeah.
This is a very violent game. So, and again, I don't want to get into story spoilers, but just with the way some of the characters and the horror-ish aspects go into this game, there's a lot of that type of over-the-top violence that you're exposed to at the beginning that kind of keeps coming back over and over again.
Yeah.
And it gives you this unsettling feel of like something really bad could happen at any moment, and you never quite get over that feeling, especially when you're playing in VR.
Yeah, I think what I was like because I played the demo and I felt like there's different types of horror that I kind of like and don't like. I felt like it was kind of like a mean horror movie, if that makes sense. Like, because like in the demo, like some guy gets like his face caved in or something, or like he gets his face like shoved into a pipe or something like that, and I was just like, it's kind of like there's like this sort of like it's like just a genre of horror where it's kind of like a crueler horror, because I've been playing Evil Within, which I'm just like really, really digging, because Evil Within is just like this sort of like schlocky zombie gross fun. There's like a weird funness to it that I just did not feel when I was playing the demo, which is fine, but it's just like it just wasn't my type of like, I don't know, is that a fair statement?
Yeah. I don't think it's not that like overly cruel. Like there are those like, okay, this scene is here purely for the violent reaction and the reaction that you're going to get from seeing this. There's a couple of those scenes, but it's never in that like, oh, don't do that, like that kind of thing. It's more of like, oh shit, did that just happen?
Oh,
like
okay,
it's more that like
yeah.
unexpected, like, oh my God, insert super violent imagery here. Like, what the hell? But there's
Yeah.
never that, like, because I think I get what you're getting at, where it's just like, oh, are you really gonna stick the thing? Oh, you're gonna no, that, like, I
Yeah.
need to turn and look here. It's much more of the like, ha, look what we just did.
Oh,
Like,
okay. Yeah.
that's obscenely ridiculous what we just did. Deal with that. All right, let's move on now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, again, if the violent stuff gets you there, yeah, it's there. It's a lot of it. I don't. There weren't any. Actually, there was one. There was one one that was actually while I was doing it in VR, which was really awkward because I kept trying to do the like turn away from the screen, and the screen kept turning with me, which I've never had in VR. But there's one scene where you get kind of like pinned to the ground by something, and you're like, oh crap, okay, like I need to turn now, and then it's like, oh, but it's still in the corner of my eye, like I can't cover my eyes or turn far enough.
Oh, like you're trying to not look at the thing that's on top of you, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
like trying to like
jeez.
not see this happen because you're like, oh crap, and then like, but it's VR, so it's like, oh, it was really weird, and I never had that experience in VR before of like trying to not look at something like you would in a horror movie, which is a really weird experience.
I get that all the time in VR because there's a certain scene in the Batman. The thing I think I know specifically, there's a part in the Batman VR where a character is like telling you to like lean in closer. No, lean in closer, and I'm like, I don't want to lean in closer.
I like where I am.
I'm good where I am. Yeah. No, so I guess kind of like not really to wrap it up, but because I know you're like a big fan of both the Outlast series and you like action Resident Evil and you really like this one. Like, do you want to see Resident Evil like 4 style going forward? I guess is the question everybody kind of asks at the end of these things, so I figured I might as well ask you.
So it's weird because having obviously just played this, the Not a Hero DLC came out, which I'm planning on doing like my own little separate review for, because you can't really talk about that unless you've played this whole game just because of where it takes place. That game does an awesome job of showing where this series could go.
Okay.
Because that game is not complete, but it is a very different tone than what this is, just in the gameplay style, what you're trying to do. And I think that gives you a much clearer picture of where they could go with this.
Yeah.
I love what they did with this, and I think it's an awesome way to do kind of that soft reboot of Resident Evil, which, with as much obscenely ridiculous crap there is in the Resident Evil universe at this point, is much needed. But I think where they're going with the Not a Hero is, if that's where they push for 8, I'd be very happy if it was kind of a more expansive version of that, and they kind of go more into that route just in terms of the style of that game, because that is much more that feels much more like Resident Evil 4. Okay. It feels like a first person Resident Evil 4. It feels like if you took Resident Evil 4 and you put it in a first person mode, just because you have more ammo, you've got a gun, you're playing as a military person. So that's much more the idea of what the later Resident Evils I think were trying to do.
Yeah.
But that still really does contain that slow pace, that go find the stuff. The like, there's still some shocking moments. There's still some horror in here. It's not just run and gun.
Yeah.
And it does a great job balancing those two. So I'm very hopeful that if this pushes forward, I don't want to see a repeat of this.
Okay.
Which, obviously, I don't think they do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to just see like, oh, you're in a house again.
Yeah.
But there's a crazy family.
But you would be okay if they released like another DLC episode or something like that. Like just like keep Resident Evil 7 its own thing, but moving forward, like you kind of need to break yourself out of that mold again.
Yeah, I think if Resident Evil 8 took more of like what they did with the DLC for this, the Not a Hero DLC, where it is more that action moving forward piece, and then you put the DLC, which is more going back to what this main game was, I could see that. And again, I'm not concerned with it being necessarily a house again, that kind of thing, but I think you could redo something like this and you could do a game very similar to this again. But I think with where the end of that story goes, you have to change it just because of the elements that are introduced in the last 5 to 10 minutes of the game in the Not a Hero DLC. There's a lot of things that are introduced where if you were to make this game again, you'd know so many of the secrets and so many of the what's going on in this universe, because the game plays very well like it's a full fleshed out reboot. Up until, yeah, again, I don't want to get spoilers, because there's some hints and nods and things like that as you go throughout, but you never feel like you're in the same universe for a good chunk of this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you had the knowledge of coming in going like, oh no, like I know all this stuff, I know exactly how this ties into this, and this is this, and I know where this came from, and and this point this is going to happen, and I know those people are out there, and I know this is here. If you have all that knowledge, I think it detracts from that like feeling of like, because you do feel like I'm in a house in the middle of freaking nowhere. There's no one around. There's nothing here. And I think knowing all those extra things are around you would almost go like, okay, like let's do this part. Let's get to the point where whatever happens. And yeah, so that would be my concern with it. There's a way to do it. And again, like I have thoughts, but I don't want to get into them because, yeah, the last chunk of this game, which the Not a Hero DLC trailers actually spoil good chunks of it. The last chunks of this game do tie a lot of things to a bigger picture, and once you get that bigger picture, a lot of the other stuff you go like, oh, okay, great.
It kind of like removes the mystery of it, because I think when I played the demo for it, I was just surprised how un-Resident Evil it was, and I think that actually adds to the horror, because you're like, oh, because you have a certain expectation of horror in Resident Evil, and this one's like, oh, it kind of turns it all on its head. So I imagine though, like because you're saying with the ending, and I think the DLC too. From like, if you watch like a trailer, it does spoil some major part. Like I know a little bit about it. It is kind of one of those things like they've sort of opened the box now. You can't really just like reclose it and try to do the same thing again.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that we did a soft reboot. We didn't tell you what it was. We just said, oh, here's a new Resident Evil. Go try it. We're not going to give you any major details on it. And honestly, again, this is going back a ways, but most of what they showed prior to this game coming out, and because it had such a short window from announcement to release, most of what they showed in this game is in the first 2 hours of a game that I think took me 7 or 8 hours to beat. So
oh, really? That's
if you've just watched trailers, you haven't watched a whole lot, you probably have not seen much more. And again, this is going off a year or two old memory, but you haven't seen much more than what happens in the first couple hours.
Oh, that's cool.
Again, it does change some things up. It does do some crazy things as you go through that. Yeah, just awesome. I absolutely love this game.
Climbing up your game of the year list.
Yeah, which this is one of those games where it's like, damn, I wish this came out like in December instead of January, because this would have probably been my game of the year for 2016, but too much good stuff in 2017.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, yeah, it's like, well, it wasn't Horizon, it wasn't Zelda, it wasn't Mario, so it was at least fourth.
What's sad is every game I feel like that's exactly how most Game of the Year awards are going to go this year. It's like, well, there's these 3, and then, you know, depending on who you are, maybe Persona gets in there or something like that. There's these 3 or 4, and then there's everything else.
Even everything else is still pretty good.
I say that everything else this year is damn good this year, so, you know.
And they all would have beaten Shadow of Mordor in 2004. If only these games came out in 2014.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. We are Workforce Gaming. If you guys like what you heard, you can always follow us at Workforce Gaming on Twitter, or subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.